We're all good with the Zoom and everything?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, we're going to pledge. And allegiance to the flag, United States of America. And to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order and take roll call.
Bush. Here. Dunn.
Here.
Harris. Here. Eisner.
Here.
Janetka.
Here.
Johnston.
Here.
Skelding.
Here. Okay. Start with recognitions.
So I have Mr. Robinson here. He's going to make a brief appearance and then skedaddle because he's got something more important to do, but I'll let him talk about the FFA livestock group.
Come right up here then. So thank you for having us and recognizing us. Again, as always, a busy time of year. Seems like every day is busy, but want to thank you again, the support from the community and the board for recognizing our 21st finish in the nation. In order to get there, we had to win state. And in FFA, once you win the state contest, you're done competing in that contest area. So have to do another one. So kind of going back to last year, we were in the same boat. We won the state and whole new team comes in, all new individuals, and we were able to win back to back, which is kind of unheard of in the FFA side of things because it usually takes a few years to build back up. But that was great. So, and this team finishing 21st is the highest rank that I've had for a team. And we've been fortunate enough to have 7 state winners, so they all go on to nationals. That was 21 out of 52 potential teams that could be there. Every state and the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico also get to send a team. They have one of those. So it was great. On the team were Cameron Patterson, Emma Steffes, Luke Schubert, and Ellie Robinson. All competed there. Again, they did a great job of representing us. And again, we appreciate all the community support and everything that we've had for this. Takes some funds to get there, and everybody's always backed the FFA and help support all those things. So we're going to try to rev it up again and get another team going, and or maybe qualify in a different contest. There's about 20 of them we can give it a try. Again, thank you.
Congratulations. I'll send it right back to Mr. Robinson. I don't know. He seems to be a pretty busy man, and it'd be nice if his children would step up to the plate once in a while. But our cross country.
Back again, and again, the reason for the rush off, and while nobody's here this evening, is the awards banquet or the awards program for cross country is tonight. Starts in just a little bit, so I'm going to dash off to Dodgeville. They talked to Denny McGraw a little bit today to kind of send some words off, but the first things he mentioned was again to thank everybody, for recognizing here. Really appreciates this co-op that we have. Just talked about how we've had such great relationships and friendships that have been through this, and how it's just been such a good experience, I think, for both schools, as he said. Just really the success that it's generated has been great. And again, finishing second in the state was pretty impressive. Last year winning, we went in, and it was kind of a 3-team race we thought going into the event. It was us, Notre Dame, and Xavier, and could have went any direction. We all felt going in that could be champions, or we could be third even there that day, depending on how things went. So we were fortunate. After the day shook out, we ended up being second, and felt pretty good about that. A lot of good races. The individuals on the team were Ellie Robinson, Annie Robinson, Julia Thompson, Brianna Wasley, Addison Christopher, Reagan Schutte, Grace Wursel, Ava Hine. And those were the people that were on the team. A couple of, call outs. I'm fortunate to be able to call them out and call them at home too. But Ellie Robinson finishing 3rd in the state as an individual in Division II. And also finished as an all-state, and that's 2 years in a row that she's been named as all-state. Annie Robinson finished 12th as an individual, just 2 places out of the medal round. Last year she was in that round and just a little bit off. But again, a great performance by all of them. We put all of their individual efforts together to get that team score and slid us in the 2nd spot. So again, great effort by them, and the Xavier team that won there that day. They did a great job too, and kind of ran away with it, as they would say. But again, thank you for all the support. And again, on behalf of those coaches, I'm glad I could be able to represent them tonight. And we'll go and give them the awards now.
Thank you and congratulations. finally, we recognize two of these individuals for State Honors Music Project. We had an addition here. We had Libby Dunn in orchestra and Elliot Webb in band, and we had recognized them at a previous board meeting. And then we would like to recognize Josie Dunn, who is competing at the middle school State Honors Band Project. Again, kids have to audition and select it, and it's a task to be selected for something like this. So we have 3 students representing Mineral Point in the music realm, which is a great honor as well. Something that we have been fortunate to have several students involved in this throughout the years, and just another great showing for Mineral Point and all the talent that our students have. So congratulations to these 3 young ladies.
Okay, thanks, Mitch. All right, next we'll go to approval of minutes. So we've got quite a few meetings that we had. So just to summarize, the special October 6th meeting was an expulsion hearing. It was a regular meeting October 10th. Then our board retreat meeting, work session on the 12th. Personnel committee on October 24th was to discuss staffing issues with the 2nd grade. And then we certified the levy on the right after that on the 24th. And policy committee was just recently. Personnel committee, policy committee was to review a couple policy changes, updates that you'll hear about later. And personnel committee was the one just met last week to talk about youth culture survey, behavioral health survey, and staff compensation. So what I want to say about that. I think I noticed on the board work retreat sessions, we don't have anything in the minutes. It's just like we met, took no action. You think it'd be reasonable, since in case the community wants to just say, oh, hey, what did they talk about at this work session? Maybe just like a paragraph summary, or just something that we explored these themes today, or just something like that. You think that'd be reasonable? Or
It certainly is. At the last regular board meeting, you shared out kind of what we've been discussing, and the work that's been taking place, some of the goals that have taken place. But
okay, so that's kind of a way to share that with the community. I forgot about that. Okay. Okay, well, if there's no other comments or amendments to be had, I'll take a motion to approve these all together, or we can approve them separately.
We'll move to approve together.
I'll second.
That's Harris and Johnston. Any further discussion?
Seeing all these meeting minutes together, it makes me understand why my kids rolled their eyes tonight when I told them I was going to a school board meeting. Yeah. Right. There have been a few in the last 6 weeks. No other comments other than we've been busy as a group.
Well, I mean, I think it's good for, the community to know that even though there haven't been a lot of hot button issues or major attendance to meetings, we have been worked on. Okay. Have a question?
Harris,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Janetka,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Skelding,
Yep.
Bush,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. And hey, Bob, I might forget you're up there periodically if you raise your hand or something. So just feel free to unmute and pipe in. Okay. Okay. Next, we'll go to communications. First is the board communications received. Start, Tony.
So I did not have anything other than a letter that was shared in confidence, or a letter that was asked to be kept anonymous, and I think that is being handled through other, it was just about and just some interactions that students had at school, and that's being addressed in the offline or in a appropriate manner.
And in addition to
Okay. Citizen communications. Is there any sign up? Is anybody here?
No sign up.
Nobody else wants to talk? Okay. Anyone online want to speak during the comment period, public comment period? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you. Next is items for information and discussion.
It's registration time for the State Ed Convention, WASB. Dates are January 18th through the 20th. Check-in for anyone going, check-in would be the 17th. Hotel right across the hall from that convention center. If you have any questions or concerns trying to get registered, reach out to Angie Schubert. She should be able to help guide you through some of those things.
And she said that she was registering all of us as a group.
Okay, and maybe she has taken
Okay.
care of that already.
And she takes care of our reservations.
Room reservations, yes, yeah.
Okay. We're off the hook.
You're off the hook, but if you can't go, the sooner you can if you're unable to attend, the sooner you can let us know that, the better. We can cancel those room reservations.
Or if someone wants to go and hasn't let Angie know, is it too late to do that?
We could try to get you in yet. Yes, there's still a little time to take care.
Just to give a plug, I had the opportunity to go last year and it really was a good experience. Lots of great presentations, good speakers, and a great opportunity to be surrounded by other people who care enough about their local community schools to commit this kind of time and effort too. So if it works in your schedule, I definitely recommend that you at least give it some thought.
The council was there.
Yeah.
It was plugged. Right?
And I'll just add, I really thought it was a really worthwhile experience as well. So I so much loads to do, and it's good just to talk with other people about school board. So.
Great. Okay, next is the school board election timeline.
Currently, there are 2 seats up for election this coming year. If you are an incumbent and you are deciding not to run, the non-candidacy must be filed no later than Friday, December 23rd at 5 p.m. I will put a plug in for Mrs. Schubert. That's not a school day. So if you know before Friday, the 23rd, 5 p.m., please file the paperwork. And for any candidates for the office, including incumbents, you need to file documents to establish eligibility on the spring 2023 ballot by Tuesday, January 3rd at 5 p.m. So if you're an incumbent not wishing to seek office, again, that deadline is December 23rd, and for anybody, including incumbents running again, January 3rd at 5 p.m. is the deadline to file the paper.
That is a school day.
That is a school day.
Is there either of those pieces of paperwork can be done at any time now? We're
Correct.
now in the window.
Correct. That's just the last day to take care of it.
Any further questions, discussion on that? Okay. Next is the budget comparison.
So in the board packet, you have last year's budget at the end of October. And it kind of sounds like a broken record. We're very close. Last year, we had spent about 27.5% of the budget at this time. This year, we are at about 29%, I believe it is. almost just under 30, 29.7%. So within about 2% from one year to the next. So again, kind of on par for our yearly expenditures. We tend to be pretty cyclical, certain bills, certain statements, certain spending happens kind of on a regular routine basis for the school district. So
Any like things that are trending higher than budgeted or an unexpected expense that can account for that slight increase or?
some of it will
about
be
timing?
with the fact that we prepaid some things so that you'll see some of the budget numbers we've expended very large percentage, and that's because we, in essence, prepaid some of those bills. So that's why some of those numbers are where they are, like is an insurance premium there. You can see we've spent 114%. Part of that was because we had prepaid on that bill and it had to be accounted for somewhere in this budget cycle. So that's why that's there. One of the things, obviously, for like everybody else, gas. The district pays for the gas for the buses and the vans and school vehicles. That's going to be a little bit higher. And then we will continue to hold our breath on the heating season as we start to roll into it. Natural gas prices are higher and projected to be probably the highest cost for heating this season. So we'll continue to monitor those areas. That would be where I would see some more trending taking place, because gas for a stretch was $4 a gallon, and that's kind of bouncing between $3.80 and $3.99 right now. So that will change some of our costs, and we adjusted the budget trying to anticipate where gas might settle. We had certainly gone higher than what we had budgeted last year on a per gallon basis, but we kind of stay in that $3.80 to $3.90. We should be okay, but if we see some spikes for longer periods of time, obviously our buses are going to eat up a lot of gas. We're into probably the most cost heavy time period with the winter sports seasons. We have boys, girls, basketball, wrestling, middle school. This is a pretty hectic time period for transportation. So something we'll keep an eye on.
So basically, if gas prices stay under $4 a gallon, we should stay on budget with our fuel prices.
We should be pretty close, yes.
There's a non-capital expenditures line that has a negative 70,000 unencumbered balance on this year's budget. Is that more of the same? We prepaid something and now it reflects oddly in our.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments about budget trends?
How would the insurance for last year be like 90,000?
Yes. Yes, that's basically like our EMC liability, property insurance kinds of things. Believe me, when I saw that, I was running down to the business office. Marcia was still here, and I'm like, I got to have a better understanding of this. And that number has been consistent throughout the months, but it's because we've took advantage of trying to prepay that amount of money.
Anything else? Okay, we'll go to building administrator reports.
Start with Mr. Renwick at the elementary school.
So these are most of the proficiency levels for reading and math this year and last year, this year compared to last year. So proficiency, it's kind of a combination of how fluent are they as a reader? Do they comprehend? Do they demonstrate, they have skills like word attack strategies, things like that. So it's proficiency isn't just can you answer the comprehension questions, there's like 5 components to it. So so the assessments we have aren't perfect, but they do help us get an initial understanding of where the kids are at. So for reading, which is our goal this year, last year as a school, at the fall, we were at 43% proficient, and then in the spring, it was 63%. You'll see there was more growth K2 versus 3-5, but that's kids at K2, especially like first grade, end of kindergarten, beginning of second, that's where they grow also. It's not surprising. And then at more of the upper level, it reflects, I think, more of just we needed a curriculum that was probably more, like I've said before, it was more complex and more challenging for kids, and increases the complexity, they go up. So just when you see grades, that we have a 4K5 literacy program or a 4K12 literacy program, not a first grade or a third grade program. So yeah, so that's where we were at last year. We saw now on the right side, remember the goal we were looking at least 80% of our kids will be proficient and or meet individualized reading goals. We're talking about students who maybe they're 2 grade levels behind, maybe they moved in from another district, or maybe they have a disability. For them to make 2 years worth of growth in a year, you're kind of setting them up for failure. So we don't want to do that. We're setting the school up for failure too. So even last year we were working on this, and last year we achieved 76% of our kids, as an average, met proficiency levels or met their individualized reading goals. Yeah.
Just to take an example,
Sure.
For the reading for 2021 and 2022, grades 3 through 5. So it says fall 47%, spring 54%, and then the proficiency in individual goal is 80%.
Right.
So you tell me, so I think you just spoke to the proficiency in individual goals, but what does the 47% in the fall mean and the 54% in the spring?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So those are the screener results. The screener, the assessments they do in the fall, winter, spring. So for 3-5, grades 2 through 5, 3-5 is STAR. And then K1, K2 is nibbles. And they're just a first line of defense, if you will, where all our kids are at. And then that kind of helps us determine which students need interventions, which students are on track, which students are in the watch area. That it's a rough assessment where the kids are.
And that percentage is proficient
Yes.
in the fall.
Correct.
So 47% of the 3 through 5 were proficient in the fall.
Yes. Sorry, if I didn't answer that. Yeah. 47 are proficient in the fall and then 50
And 80% sort of the 54 plus the individualized learning goals.
Yes. Yep. So they especially at the older level, those students are better, more self-aware, and they can actually see their progress. The interventionists will help chart it out, and they've done a lot more of this year. I think we're going to see even better. We're already seeing some pretty strong growth. Some of these students, just talking with the interventionists and special education.
So what do we feel is most important? Is it what happened from fall to spring, or is it what happens from spring of this year to fall of next year, or is it the percent that met proficiency this year compared to the percent that met proficiency last year? Okay.
The third one, I think,
Okay.
at least in terms of does introducing a new literacy curriculum program plus the professional development that goes with it, we see a boost from that. We see improvement. Well, I think that's a little more apples to apples. I think for a teacher, and that she or he can look at her classroom and say, I've got 20 kids, and 40% of my kids are proficient in the fall, and 70 in the spring. Well, she can, or he can own that because you know, he or she was likely the only teacher, maybe this, an interventionist, so that for me is the most important, although seeing a kid independently reading and loving reading is just as important, and they want to read every day. I mean, that kids reading every day and they just want to, I mean, their scores are going to go up.
I would think either fall to fall or spring to spring, making those comparisons.
Yeah.
The spring to fall, which is what teachers will look at, talks about what happened over the summer. They take that test in the spring of the year after a year's worth of instruction, and then they're off June, July, August. How much slippage has there been? So if you're looking at spring to spring, you're seeing how much that student has grown over the course of the school year. Or if you look at fall to fall, here's where they started, where did they start? And the numbers here show that, that K2 group is starting at a higher place than the previous year. So I mean, I think you want to make sure you're looking at those same numbers from year to year to look at real comparison and see what kind of growth has happened.
That's typically said, yeah. So like here, you've got 76% of the school met proficiency or met their goals. We're hoping that our goal is 80%. So that's 4 to 5% increase, which feels doable. And would hope that would happen. Right now, we're at 45% in the fall. We were at 43% last fall. So there's a 2% growth. Mostly the same kids. We exited one grade out, we brought one in, but yeah. So I know just this is the back of the napkin kind of chart here, but these kids, here are kids that are on track, right? They're just making steady growth, they're proficient, they're doing well. Here's our kids that are struggling readers or just not there yet. And the goal, we mean individualized reading progress. We want to get a steeper line going up so they eventually hit this. So we want them to make more than 1 year's worth of growth. So we do that through, again, helping them monitor their own progress, giving them more time to read, accommodations, just a combination of everything.
Does the test, the screener, does it measure where a student is expected to be at grade level in the fall or just at grade level?
The fall.
Okay,
Yeah. So they'll take, if there's 1 million kids who take the STAR, well, it is criteria based. So proficiency is based on the beginning of the year. Where would we expect those kids to be at? And then it changes in the spring. I want to make sure I'm saying that right. The assessments, though, that we're doing with Benchmark actually assess them based on end of the year standards. So most of our kids are not proficient yet. On the Benchmark, the curriculum we're using, the end of the unit assessments, it's a little different. We've done some PD around that to understand that. Okay, that 90% of your kids are failing because this is what we expected at the end of the year.
But,
Oh, go ahead.
if we got a 45% in the fall, what do we bring together?
It'll depend on how many kids are on some kind of individualized goal plan. That'll be part of it, how the population's working with that. I know the interventionists and specialists are continuing to try new things with the kids instead of saying, well, the intervention didn't work. Well, what if we kind of gamify it, and when they reach a certain level of proficiency, then they'll get a book as a gift, kind of a reward that's more with the identity as a reader versus Arcanius. So I know another specialist is recording videos of how to teach reading, some simple skills that then a parent can do at home, replicate the same thing, and the kids can talk with their parents or family. So they're, trying to build in more relevance and engagement. That's what we're trying to add. But the goal is 80%. So we're hopeful it's not like perfect science. It's just here's where we think the kids are at. But
We think it's attainable though.
I think so, especially now, like if you look at the math, I just put the math in there. It's not our goal this year, but 49% in the last year proficient. This is grades 2 through 5 are, and then in the spring there's 76%. And that's no individualized plan. That's just And what do we have with math is different than literacy. We have a core resource, math expressions. Now we have a core resource for literacy. So with that, with the professional learning that you supported, bringing more books into the classroom library, we're doing all the right things. So it's just trust the process, trust each other.
How does the staff at the elementary, are they embracing the new curriculum, or have there been bumps? How would you characterize the adaptation?
I've met with several teachers about it. What's working for you, what's not. It's the theme I'm hearing is it's overwhelming. But once they get past the first unit or two and they see kind of the thinking behind it, like here's why we take notes on the side margins, because then we use it for the writing project. We take our reading and apply it to the writing. They're starting to see the importance of that. Kids are seeing the importance of that too, of taking what they're learning from the reading and apply it to the project. But it's a lot, and I've done more of, you don't need to do that right now. Technology, the website's not working. There's some important tools, but I know we just need to focus on the mini lesson. There's just so much stuff. Like, there's that tendency to feel like we gotta do it all. And kind of keep it low.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you have an additional PD set up throughout the course of the year too, so that it wasn't just hey, this happened 2 days before school started and you're done. There's some continuity in the professional development.
Yeah, they came one day and so they came one full day and they did 4 demonstration lessons in the classroom. So the expert teacher, our kids, and teachers then were like a fishbowl and watched her do it, and then had questions for her afterward. She's not a part of the publisher. She's a separate from that. So she's very open with us about, yeah, don't do that. Do this part, because this is what actually works. The curriculum's good, but
Is there more that we as a board can be doing to support you or to support the elementary staff as they adapt this curriculum?
I think just continuing as, we're taking some sub days, which we don't love to do. But when you've got a new resource like this, it's so important to give teachers the time to. We also have virtual PD built in. So the same person who came to our district, he also will hop on a Zoom and speak with for an hour with the teacher team. And then just help them like troubleshoot the assessment or the technology, or have questions about the mini lesson. Just,
Is that set up or is that something that they're taking advantage of?
yes, more and more are taking. I think we've had half the grade levels already do at least one virtual PD with the trainer, and the more one team will do it, then they'll talk about it and say, "Oh, it's great." And then their teams hear about it, and then I start signing up. Again, then it's like they've got to set up sub plans for the next day to be able to do it. And so time is our number one constraint, always is. So again, what you've done to support not just the curriculum, but the PD hours to work with us, plus the support of time and subs, and that's been great.
Per grade level, they're also looking at numbers.
We have not rolled this out yet. I shared it with the leadership team and the intervention team. They have seen where we're at. We did like a root cause analysis last year, so they saw last year's scores. So these are just out now, all results. Doesn't include the state report card and embargo. But that's another thing too, is the state report card. The state test typically does not align well with our local assessments. So doesn't mean they're wrong. It just,
They're going to look a little different.
yep. They're further removed from every day.
Thanks, Matt. When will the spring data be available to kind of circle back on
Yeah.
progress for the year?
Will it be do the assessments in April? It's a look. Is it May?
January.
January is the winter
windows are
assessments.
preset.
What's that?
The windows are preset by STAR so that we're comparing to other students at the same point.
Did I describe STAR accurately?
Yeah, there's multiple measures, so you can like predict their their accuracy towards meeting end of year benchmarks, but at like the fall scores are grade level norm to that grade at that point in time in the year, but then we can do some forecasting or predictions on based upon this score. What's the likelihood they'll be meeting the end of year benchmark too?
So if you have asked of that student from second grade, third grade,
Yeah.
right? You got 2 years worth of data to say, likely not. It's likely where they're going to be that. And if use that for placement of intervention.
Yeah.
Starting to train, they may be proficient right now or like low proficient, but they're actually trending this way and they want them to go this way.
There's winter's test scores that are not included here
Correct.
from last year.
Yeah. So we find the winter ones go much higher.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody, there's that slide from spring to fall. And there's a big bounce up usually in January, and then like the spring kind of plateaus off. And one of the advantages of STAR or another measure similar to it is we have students from second grade through eighth grade take this. So it's really a picture of the student's growth over time. And so when you look at just like two data points, sometimes you're like, oh, but if you look at the student in second, third, fourth, fifth, you can get a really nice trend line trajectory. And that's one of the reasons we like it is because it follows the student for so long. So now the middle school has access to everything they did in elementary school, and they can just see that trajectory pattern.
It seems like we're taking action from that investment, which is good to hear. And
Yes.
you didn't have to ask for this data, you came with it,
It
so.
was good that we continue forces us to be.
Thank you.
Yep.
Even as of the embargo, is that still on?
Tomorrow morning.
Oh, really?
Tomorrow morning is when they will release the information to the public.
Okay, so we can hear about it at the next board meeting then?
Yeah, that's our plan.
All right, great.
I'll turn it over to Ms. Stahl from the middle school.
So on October 28th, Kristen Golly from CISA 3 in to help us explore middle school and district forward data. I can't share the results because it's embargoed tomorrow morning, but there are some findings that we took away from that meeting with her. With ELA, one of the things we have to make sure that our curriculum and standards are aligning. Math, reviewing our resources and curriculum. Also our scope and sequence. Scope is the amount of content that an educator will teach. And then the sequence is the order in which they will teach it. And then overall, we talked about student engagement. Are we reaching our students? The importance of the forward, student buy-in. You know, for instance, our eighth graders, they start taking the forward when they're in third grade. And by the time they get to eighth grade, are they burned out from testing? What are some things that we can do as a staff to motivate them for the forward? And I don't think it's just our eighth graders. I think when they get into middle school and we've been taking the forward and then we're STAR testing and reading and math, 3 times during the school year. So we need to figure out some ways to motivate our students. Change our testing schedule, because normally what we've been doing, we've been testing science and social studies, the first part of the testing window, like when we get back from spring break. So this year we want to flip that and test ELA and math, because we think sometimes by the time, we're in the 5th week and we're testing ELA and math, our students are like, I'm done with this. So we're looking at the testing schedule during the testing window. Also more vertical meetings between our 5th and 6th grade teams to see in math and ELA, are there any gaps or maybe the fifth graders or fifth grade team's not addressing, and then the sixth grade team needs to address. I don't want to say I was shocked, but what really stood out to me was the difference in our gender scores, female to male, in both ELA and math. So that's something that we need to take a look at. So what we're going to do moving forward is use some of our PLC time, to not just have this one meeting in the morning. We want to use some of our PLC time to really dig into this. And by the time we have our forward exam, really be prepared and know what we're going to do with our students moving forward here. So
you looked at, if I know we can't talk specifics data embargo, but have you compared the discrepancy between the scores for genders compared to like GPAs by gender to see if that, like, is there a correlation so you can tell if it's something about specifically about the testing and one gender becomes more disengaged than the other with the testing, or is it a broader disengagement with the educational process?
on the forward, it just gives you the percentage. Like it'll have, okay, females tested at proficient in ELA at such a percentage, and then it'll have the same for the male. So that is something that we would have to dig into to see if it correlates to the GPA.
Whether it's GPA or just looking at grade, like
Grades.
or however you think about it. I'm just curious if it's about the testing or if it's about the education as a whole.
Or maybe the fact that I'm successful in math, so I score very well in math. And if I'm not very successful in math, then maybe I'm not scoring very well.
That's the expected result,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So and compare that to the gender. Yeah.
Would
Yep.
one gender go up and down, both go down?
Just the difference in the percentage
Gotcha.
of the tests, like in advanced and
Probably a higher percentage of one gender is
Gender.
proficient versus the other
the
gender.
other, yes.
Wide got it.
Yes, yes. That is what really stood out to me when we were looking at some of this.
More so than other years past.
This is really like the first time that we really dug into it this way.
But you would be able to get that information from years past.
I could from CISA 3. I could ask her to do a comparison.
Along those same lines, I guess. I was thinking that about whether it's a testing engagement problem or an education on the whole problem, that there's got to be a way to look at past data for GPA compared to the test, and so not just necessarily by gender, but just the whole classes as a whole. And if it's just the testing, it seems pretty easy to incentivize part of a year, whatever, something like that. But if it's the whole,
We would
whole thing,
do but
I think
dig in a little more.
this has been my position when I was the DAC and the high school principal and all of those fun things that people get to do. The one thing that those test scores never measure, so when you talk about what is the comparison between the test score and somebody's GPA, those tests don't measure how hard someone's willing to work, the effort and time somebody's putting in, so student A might go home and open up the book, yep, I got it, and knock out 100 on an exam. Student B goes home and spends an hour each night for 5 nights to get an A on that same exam. Scores are the same, but it doesn't measure the effort someone's willing to put in. And I think sometimes that shows up on some of those test scores too, that ACT score doesn't really say that this student isn't going to work hard and earn every grade and get good grades and be successful in the next step because they had a lower ACT score or a lower forward score or something of that nature.
And when you look at the performance in the different areas, and that's with the scope and sequence that we need to look at. If we're not performing well, say in geometry, or not performing well in reading vocabulary, then we need to look at where we're teaching that. You know, if we're teaching in the beginning of the year, then are we getting it? Those are some things that were broken down in there that we're going to be discussing.
Seems like the first time in a while that CISA has come in and facilitated this kind of data exploration, data analysis. Is this something that, I mean, how did this come about?
Because I was worried.
Mhm.
I was worried after COVID because, you know, as a middle school, we've been pretty successful since the school report card started. So I guess you could say I kind of had, I just had a feeling with, especially with where our classes were and the kind of the attitudes and the academic progress. I was nervous.
Was this going to be a longitudinal process throughout the year that this CISA person will meet with your teams through the
No,
year to?
we have the data where we meet as a group now and
Okay.
discuss how we want to move forward.
Okay.
Move forward with the forward exam.
Can you get additional support from CISA if needed?
Yes, oh yes, definitely. Yeah. And
That's
she
part
was,
of our contract. Yeah.
she was really good. So, and I appreciate, you know, the middle school staff taking time out of their workday that morning to sit and go through this data. Appreciate that.
We're still under embargo until tomorrow. Does that mean that we will see school report cards tomorrow morning, or is this just the test scores that come out tomorrow?
The report cards will be released tomorrow.
Vicky, do you have fall star data? It's not forward data.
I do, but I don't have it with me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
because that's my SLO is on reading, our reading data.
okay.
So, which I shared.
The last
Is
meeting
that
or-
September, I think?
Okay.
We went over our goals.
We'll forward the spring test. Spring test that we don't get results
Got
until
The window is that 5 or 6 weeks. Yeah, the window is like it's like March, the end of March to like the end of the first week of May. But we do that, and then all of a sudden we're doing the STAR test in
This year is
that.
March 20th to April. We don't get results till August.
Right? So then April 28th, and then following week, we could ask kids to do the STAR math and reading exam. Also, any other questions on that? I move on.
I just think it'd be cool next month to see like a trend in the gender data.
Or like how many years, or you just want to see this year? 3 years, okay. Sure.
What's sticking out?
Also, I wanted to share, we're having a really good response to the Choose Love curriculum from both our teachers and students. I had a teacher share with me that they were very impressed with the student engagement in their advisory group with some of the lessons. We did send out a letter to let parents know about the Choose Love curriculum. Also, our middle school makers club is back for 6th to 8th graders. It meets after school on Wednesdays. We started this about 2.5 years ago before COVID hit, and it was a very popular club. And we had about 15 to 20 students attend last week. Brown, Mrs. McCoy, and Mrs. Robb run that. And it's based off of STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And so they'll do like some design and build projects. So the kids really seem to enjoy it.
List of middle school clubs.
I can tell you right now, we basically have Bakers Club and Art Club. For,
There'd be a middle school book club.
book clubs during the day. Mrs. Rob and some of our middle school students wrote a grant through the Green Bay Packers, which they have to do a presentation on Thursday. Was selected, and they are doing their presentation is going to be on a kindness club and some of the things that they can do to promote kindness in the middle school.
And there's a math team,
Right, math team.
kind of like a math club, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
And is there a general academic team as well? Or is it just math?
Math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The middle school student council.
Middle school student council. Mr. Miles is in charge of student council. Thank you. All I have, unless you have more questions.
Has anyone ever asked about an environmental club? Just
No,
curious.
but, we used to take that week in April. Oh, I'm drawing a blank of what that used to be called.
Father's Day week?
Chuck Tennyson used to come in, and we used to go out to the Don Hawkins, Santa down here with our.
Number Eddie.
No. Name for it. I can't think of it. I'm getting old.
Day or Arbor Day or.
Keep throwing names at her.
I am good. I will know by the end of this meeting. Okay?
Just yell it
I'll
out.
tell you. I will. I'll yell it out. Okay. Yep, thanks.
Next will be high school, Mr. Austin and Mr. Allen.
Okay, so I'm Roger Griffin with me.
Great.
Griffin is our student body president, student council president, or senior class president. So we're going to talk about a couple different things. I was happy he could join us tonight here too. First thing we're going to talk about, this is more Griffin, is last week on Wednesday, we had our second ever career fair here. So we had one last spring. We moved it to the fall because we have some plans for the spring this next year. And I'll kind of let Griffin go from there. So last week, Wednesday, we had our career fair. I'll let Griffin kind of.
Yeah, so it's split into about 4 sections. The first one is when we had that career fair. You probably think of right away that we had in the gym with a bunch of different local businesses and colleges and then the armed forces as well. It's really just a great way for the kids to interact with different businesses and learn more about different careers. And then senior class, especially meet with different colleges that they're thinking about applying to and gain more information. And then after that, we moved to our alumni panel, which is my favorite one, just to kind of learn how things are going for people that are in college, recently graduated, or in the workforce. I think they all say a lot of great things. One that stood out to me a lot was that Stavers kind of talked about the importance of not a particular college is what's best for you. Something that took a lot of stress off kids, just thinking that one college is perfect for them, but more about what you gain out of that college experience, the networking, the connections you form, and just how deep you dive into the education experience rather than the specific college itself. We had Bill Hansen here who kind of talked a lot about moving into the workforce right away in his construction career that he's working on right now. So I think that was a lot great for the kids interaction wise for kids that aren't going to a four-year college. And then after that, we moved on to the local careers panel. So we had the Iowa County Highway Department, John Deere, Beringer Ingelheim, and Cummins. So I think it's kind of a wide variety of different careers that explain that required a college degree or didn't. It was also great to see a lot of kids that want to become welders or go into the trades, kind of talk to Cummins a lot about that. I mean, even a classmate, Brody Lee, was able to stay after the panel meeting, and then he's able to meet with Cummins and kind of talk about his next step as a welder as well. I think that was kind of great for them all to learn about different careers specifically from different people themselves. And then after that, we moved into the final section, which is about turning 18. So we had the Dodgeville police officer, the resource officer come over, and he made a Kahoot that he was able to share with the entire senior class, kind of talking about different laws and things we should all know when turning 18. That kind of hit home a lot for the senior class, just thinking about things that are going to change when you turn 18 and taking legal responsibilities.
A couple of other things, and that was the senior class, obviously, they had a couple different things would be. We also had a careers and corrections. Nothing wrong on that. There was a union out of the person that was in charge of all the unions out of Madison was here talking to a couple of the groups. We also had Southwest Tech come over and do careers you've never heard of with some of the younger groups. Talk about some of the different things that they offer and whatnot. So big variety of a day. Overall, very busy day to say the least, but pretty awesome day. And thank you. I know a couple of you guys were here too, and maybe you want to speak about it too, but it's so neat to see the community come and put that on together, because it really is a community effort. We have 55, 60 tables set up of vendors that are there literally from 9 to what time is the middle school? Does it go 1:30?
About like 120.
Yeah, so 1:30. And those people are there talking to almost every kid that we have in the school. You get the opportunity to ask questions, to hear different things from people that were on the alumni panel, which we try to change each year. Really neat opportunity. Kudos goes out to Miss Brunson. She does a lot of that work, setting up those connections. You know, it's the second time we put it on, but overall, I think it's a lot of fun. It's a day I look forward to, and I will look forward to in the future here too. A lot of fun. So I don't know if anybody has any questions for that day or nothing.
I did want to add, I brought my coworker from Madison, so we represented careers in nonprofits and international business, sort of both things that we do at my work, and it was fantastic. So I did want to congratulate Erica Brunson and Matt and everybody else that put a lot of work into that. The students met us at the front desk and were really welcoming, and it was fun to be back doing something at the school. And for me, you know, I talked to the kids a lot about Spanish and just how I took Spanish all 4 years in high school and ended up doing a study abroad. So we talked about that study abroad experience a lot in college, and like encouraging kids to go for a year if they can, instead of just 6 months, and to keep taking a foreign language. And you know, there's some kids that weren't interested at all, and others that were like, oh, that's, you know, a good idea. It was fun to have the whole array of kids too. So seniors were first, and we ended with 6th graders. And just the questions were fantastic, you know, like at all those different levels. Like seniors are a lot closer to it, you know, and like about to make this big jump. And I don't know if you feel this way, but I thought they were a little more nervous about their life choices.
I think it's setting it, starting to set it.
Yeah, and then the further you got away from that, the more kind of fun they were having with it, and just thinking about all these different careers. But I was shocked how many tables there were there. I mean, it was an incredible amount of people who were interested in the talent at the Mineral Point schools. And we had fun getting to know some of the people next to us and what their careers were about as well. I had a great time seeing some of my old teachers or former teachers, like Mrs. Claus and Ian Van Gielen and Mr. Burrison, you know, teachers that were here when I was in high school. So it was a lot of fun to talk to them, and now that I'm in this role as well. Lastly, I think it was a 6th grader, so the very last sort of hour that we were there. And
Mine went too,
no, it's a positive story. So it was a young boy, and he came up, and the middle school kids had a list of questions, and each of the kids had to ask one question of every table. So we were getting really hounded. So this young man came up and said, well, you know, what do you do? And we had these pictures of our end borrowers in Latin America that we help. So we kind of tell the story. But I made sure to tell all the kids, I went to school here, you know, and this was my path, and you could do this if you wanted. And the kid said, so when you travel to Central America, you have to pay for your plane ticket, right? So no, the company pays for it. But it's a nonprofit, so you don't get paid for this. I said, no, I do okay and I get paid and they pay for the ticket, and I usually travel a couple of days after I take a trip and see, what there is to see in the area. And he looked at me and said, okay, in 10 years. So I got one kid to work for me.
So I had a chance to be here that day and the energy was fantastic. Walking into the gym and seeing all the tables and then all the students interacting was really cool. And then one of my daughters came home and talked about like, she's been planning on being a second grade teacher since second grade. And after the career fair, she's going to be an anesthetist. So she must have been in the careers you've never heard of section, but she's all in. So I'm happy.
Questions about that there? So that's one of the fun things that we've done so far. One of the other things that we had this fall, and we did this the first time last December, and we tried to move it up this year, so we had a little bit more time, was our business connection night. So we invite almost every business within a certain radius. We sent out a ton of postcards and stuff. We probably had, I want to say 30 businesses here, and we had quite a few people here. We had some staff members come and stuff. Really good conversation that night. We talked about some different things. We look at what employers look at, things like that, attributes, skills. We actually had them at the end of it rate them as a group, as a table. So you have people from, we can pick Cummins, we can pick, let's say, the healthcare field. We have a teacher there. We had somebody else. They're all working together to rank these 13 skills. You want to talk about a tough task, because it's like, well, this is really important here, but this is really important here. I think the top one out of most of those was integrity and willingness to do what needs to be done. And there's a better word for that in there, but really neat night. It lasts about an hour. And I would invite you all to come next time we have one. It'll probably be next fall. We talked about the next thing that I'll talk about a little bit too, which is a portrait of a pointer and what that looks like a little bit. Eric and I have started to dig into that. And also from this idea, we've talked about potentially doing, instead of just a business connection, a community connection, to really bring the community in to engage in some of those conversations and the skills. Don't quote me on when that'll be, because I don't know off the top of my head. But I think that we're looking at that sometime in the spring here as a night to get more people in to talk about. Which kind of brings me to, is there any questions on that before I go on? It's a really neat and fun night. We've enjoyed it both times. Angie actually came this year to it too. It was just a nice conversation with people. It's what you're looking for. How can we help each other? From that, we've had, as I talked about, I think earlier this year, we went from about 8 kids in youth apprenticeship to this year we're at about 40 between the junior senior class, which is great. Each day we probably had, and out of those 40, there's probably 25 to 30 that sign out and actually go each day. Some of those qualify for the weekend or however they do it, but there's probably about 25 to 30 of them that sign out each day at the end of 6 hours to go to work, which is fantastic because they're getting hands-on experience. What's that?
That's part of the player and their about the benefits of that program, because they sold it to the other employers there. It makes my job or Erica's job or Matt's job less work when employers are saying it's been amazing and I want them to stay or I want to hire them and take it in.
Mm-hmm. Really cool night though. From that, so Ms. Brunson and I have started to dig into, it's called actually Portrait of a Graduate. It's through CESA 7. It really looks at, I know I sent you guys all an invite for that. And again, thank you for even considering coming. But we talked with the guy from CESA 7 that kind of leads it up. We call it Portrait of a Pointer, just to make it a little more personalized. Eric and I, after looking through a lot of it, we're trying to figure out, okay, where do we start? But some of this pulls into the CTE stuff, the academic and career planning stuff. It really looks at the questions, and I sent these to you too, but what every graduate should know and be able to do, which isn't necessarily measured on an ACT score. are measured on the forward exam or the pre-ACT. And what skills, attributes, and knowledge do each one of them need to leave this building with? Right, if you're going to go into science, and I'm going to pick science because I was a science guy, something that you need to be able to know and be able to do is you should be able to take data, put it onto a graph. That's something you should be able to do. Or you should be able to follow a set of instructions to do a lab. Right? And I know you're nodding your heads, but I can imagine it works in the science field. But if people up there don't follow what they're supposed to do, what happens? Well, it doesn't go so well. They typically don't have a job after a while. So it's one of those things. It's a skill. It's not on the ACT. It's not one that's you're going to read in a state standard, but it's a skill that, but we've identified that, hey, kids need to be able to take a set of instructions and follow them. A science lab measures or collect the data from that. They need to be able to do that in order to be successful in certain things they're going into. So it really looks at the skills, attributes, and knowledge. Kind of looks at what is our fundamental focus as a school, and that's where we need to really start. And again, it's readiness, skills, and attributes versus not necessarily the test score. Again, what says they're ready to go into the workforce, the job field, 2-year, 4-year, whatever path they choose. What are we doing to make sure that they're ready to go? And that's part of what we're doing with the, student portfolio that we're trying to work with in Zello, is try to collect those things and identify what those skills are. At some point, Mr. Wainwright was part of that conversation that day that we had the guy from CISA 7 here. At some point, we will probably come and talk though about, and I love the way that this is said here too. It is a journey. It's not a 1-year thing, but at 3 to 5 years, and it talks about how far do you want to move that mountain each year. So how far do we want to? What do we want to see the next year, the following year? How do I identify those things? And when we have that conversation, we'll bring up other examples of schools that have started this work. And it is a process. And it's one that I think is well worth our time. Make sure that every kid is able to be successful. So that's kind of the gist of that. Questions? A lot of words, sorry.
Again, is this a longitudinal project supported by CC 7?
It can be, yes. Yep, CISA 7 will support you in there. I'm sure it's not very cheap to do it that way.
Okay.
So we're looking at it. We're looking at it and trying to determine, do we take the basis of it, which we have from them, and be able to follow that process? Or do we really need them to dig in with us and go through that? So that's kind of where we're at right now. CISA 3 is also starting something kind of similar, but we've already kind of started down this path. So it's kind of interesting to see what that looks like. But more or less, it's kind of the same thing. Theirs is called 720 days, which is the number of school days in a 4-year student over 4 years. This is called Portrait of a Graduate or Portrait of a Diploma. We really like this though. So it's just something that maybe we need to go with CISA 7 on it. Maybe we're able to line ourselves up and do it ourselves with the process.
Yeah, I guess a better question is, what is the process for the school year now that you've kind of established what you want a undergraduate to look like, what skills you want to graduate with?
I think that's what we need to start with. And I just brought up examples, but that's something that we need to start with. So like one of the school districts has the first year they went through and they took basically the whole year and identified, here are the 7 skills that they need their students to have in order to be successful, no matter which field they go to. I think that's the process that we really need to start and dig into.
That was part of a bigger team. That wasn't just the school saying what this is. This was people in the community, people in businesses. So it was getting this team put together to start that process, and then that group sits down and tries to hammer out some of these things. What do we see these 6, 7, 8 key components and so on and so forth. So that's part of the reason why it's a multi-year process that you're trying to help define those things.
So you and Ms. Brunson are kind of taking the lead on this? Is that my understanding?
We had to get through career
Yeah.
fair. Yeah, and maybe the next logical thing is to survey people. I'm not sure. We will sit down. We actually have a CTE training on Friday, and I'm sure we will talk about this stuff too. See kind of where we're at.
So at what point do you come back and share, like, here's the plan?
what, 3 months, 6 months from now?
I don't have a great answer for you on that. The only reason I say that is because there are so many moving parts with stuff. Like right now, we're trying to get stuff realigned for our CTE data. Because the state 2 years ago added new course codes that changed over to CTE. We've had to go back and redo those course codes. Even though it's the same number, it's got CTE on it. We want you to update that stuff. Reporting. So we're trying to fix all that stuff right now. I think at some point, that's after we talk a little bit more, probably our admin team, I think at some point we come back to you guys and kind of lay out what that time. Maybe that's in January, maybe that's in summer's not very far away. So maybe that's in January, maybe that's in February, but it's just more looking at here's what it looks like. Here's the first part that we need to go with, which may come back to maybe we need to get season 7 to kind of guide us a little better.
On that.
Yeah, so
guide the decision-making.
They talk about setting up a team. You'll have but you got to set up that team first. So we need to kind of pull in there, see who would be on that team and which direction. Yes, that would need board representation, probably community representation. Each building, it's not just a high school thing or a middle school. It's from that grade level, from down there to here. What's that look?
I mean, in January is reasonable. I mean,
Eventually,
I'm just thinking it sounds like a really big thing to do, and if like we don't put some timelines around it, it's like such a big audacious goal there. I just think a timeline would help. Like,
The holidays, January seems too soon.
Yeah, I think to Justin's point, it's, when we have a really great idea, we just want to,
see follow
we
through.
want to schedule follow-up.
Yep.
So even if,
March, just let us know it's reasonable.
right, so, I mean, even if we meet January and say, well, we've met one time,
Right.
we're meeting again in 2 weeks to form our team or whatever, at least we.
An update.
we have an update.
Yeah,
And I think the first thing is kind of a schedule of what it looks like. Okay.
That's a cool project, though.
How are businesses chosen for Business Connection Night and the Career Fair?
We invite anybody that would like to come. Listen, if we have a running document that's got like every business that we're told about them. Like, so basically the first time we ever did this, Ms. Brunson and I sat down on a computer and Googled every business that was around here, and we kept adding to that list and kept adding to that list. And now we got a list, and then we have all the addresses on there. So we just print the labels right out. And then anytime we hear somebody else or send it out, we send it out. So it's anybody and everybody can come.
Do you feel like you have a pretty good representation of different sectors?
Yes, I do, actually. Between
So anybody-
manufacturing, healthcare, trades. This year we actually had a guy with did you see like a 3D virtual reality power scrubber? It was insane. You could see what the kid was doing. Like the kid put on the 3D model. It was a power scrubber for cement. So they were troweling cement. It was a 3D thing. That was really cool. But we haven't turned anybody away. Let's put it that way. We try to get as many as we can here to represent as much as we can.
Is there anybody that you feel you're missing? You don't have to answer that right now.
And Erica may have a better answer for that. I know one of the things that when we were looking at the local careers panel, we tried to find somebody that had an animal science connection. Erica's had quite a few kids recognize that, yeah, maybe vet science is where I'd like to go or something along that line. So we tried to make sure we had somebody there for that, which we did. We had a person that works with dairy genetics and stuff. And we tried to get a vet. Vets are very busy, like anybody. So animal science may be one, but we send postcards to everybody and anybody, even for both of them. The first one's on the business connection night says, here's the business connection. We'd love for you to come. We ask if you can RSVP, that's great, but we don't make it. Then on it, it'll say career fair is this day, I believe. So try to give them the heads up. And that one we do try to have people who RSVP because obviously we have to set up tables. And I do want to thank Dave and all their hard work for setting up tables and
getting that gym ready for that, because it is a lot of work. And the mats are working out well.
Did you say you had 55 tables?
I think we actually had set up 60 some, 62, I want to say. A lot. But we had a couple people not make it, and that's okay. That happened. It was a nice day out. I don't blame them. Like, there were tradespeople. They're probably working outside, so I get it. Yeah, we'd love to keep expanding it more and more. But it's a nice day. And we try to, so if you do know somebody that didn't get invited, let us know, because we'll put them on the list for next year. Absolutely.
Any other questions for Mr. Austin?
You can get invited.
I couldn't make it.
Oh, what was that? I invited you. Good look.
Part of our meetings, we're thinking about retention for teachers. Was there a teacher's table?
We asked, a couple of people did not take us for that. Part of it is at the elementary, they'd have to go sub. At this level, nobody really took us up on that offer. We did have. What's that?
Retired teachers. So my mom would totally.
All right, we'll keep you on.
Just retired teachers.
What's that? We did have.
There's
have
good
her-
speech and
We had a
language.
speech and language pathologist there. She had her own table, which was a lot of cool stuff.
Well, it's something we're talking about, like getting kids interested in teaching
Yep.
and to come back to Middle Point and teach here. So
We do,
I
so
think that would be great. And there were like quite a few kids that talked about wanting to be teachers.
one thing that we've tried to do, youth apprenticeship work experience is neat because we can provide opportunities for kids, right? Each year we have a certain number of kids that seem to be going into education. So we have helped create opportunities to get them into the classroom, right? To see if they really like that. So this year we have, I want to say it's just one student, but they go down every day during youth apprenticeship time to the elementary and work with the teacher.
Awesome.
Oh, it's fantastic.
We had actually talked about that.
Yeah.
At our
We've had over the years, I think the most we had in a year was 3 do that, but each year it seems to be 1 or 2 kids that they'll either go to the elementary or they'll go to the middle school. We actually have one that helps out with math this year. So, yeah.
The other thing that I was going to say, just on the get rid of a pointer. I don't want the board to like take that as our own, like it's yours thing, but you've got a really diverse group of people here, all in different careers at different places. So please make use of us if you can. Or I will, especially as we're responsible for setting the mission and vision of the school district. There's part of this that sort of leans into that as like, what do we, when, having gone to school here myself, where do I want to be when I'm 60? And did I get the skills starting out early enough in the school district to get in where I am?
Is that part of that conversation that CC7 talks about? Is connecting with your board, community, and so on, and gathering those things to see where those fall. So, cool. All right.
Thank you. Week. I'd like you to know she sat down with us.
Combination is another word.
Okay, next are reports from our last committee meetings. We had policy committee meeting and a personnel committee meeting. Okay. Bob, you're chair of policy.
Yeah.
You want to give a
Sure.
quick summary?
Yeah. So over the policy committee, I know we're going to have a couple of policies read tonight. One is going to be about the open enrollment policy that we follow for the school, and adding things like a waiting period to it, which I think will be helpful. And then the other is related to the leave policy for staff. That currently they get 10 days a year and 3 are to be used for personal days. And we have a change to that policy that's been drafted that with the help of Mr. Carey, that allows it to be 10 days really for, I don't want to say for any reason, but they're 10 days with no real definition of what they're for. So they can use it all for personal days if they needed to. But there are some some controls in there that administration felt comfortable they would be able to address it if they felt anybody was abusing it. And I think both those policies are going to have their first reading tonight, if I'm not mistaken. So.
I guess any questions for Bob specifically about the minutes or the discussion at the meeting? Want to make sure anything was covered or on these two issues. Okay, thanks, Bob. Next, we'll have Personnel Committee brief summary.
So the Personnel Committee has actually met twice the last meeting. The first meeting we met to discuss staffing at the second grade level that we'll discuss a little more in another agenda item under employee services. But what we discussed was really around the fact that we currently have 2 sections in second grade this year, and those sections do have some they're resource intensive sections, and so additional supports would be ideal to help provide teachers a better year, but also provide the students with the supports they need in order to have a successful academic year. And so we talked about different ways to accommodate that and reviewed a proposal that was brought forth by Mr. Renwick regarding a long-term substitute teacher that would help out in the second grade during half of the day, and then also provide some additional supports to some of the older elementary school grades, specifically the 5th graders, during the remainder of the day. That meeting was a couple weeks ago now, so I'm just glancing at the minutes, but if anybody else could call anything they want to call out. And then the second Personnel Committee meeting, we discussed the results of the youth risk behavior survey, and we had several members of the staff here, including Angela Klein, Erica Brunson, Danny Robb, and Matt Austin was here as well. And they were very patient. As we asked a lot of questions, they were very patient with talking with us about what the results of those survey were telling us about our student, about the culture within our school, and what action steps are being taken to address that. So no action items coming out of that, but just definitely we're doing, as a board, we've taken an attitude of supporting social and emotional learning and development of our students, and we've got some good things in place to help our population continue to be to grow and expand in that way. And then we finished out that meeting with a discussion around an employee contract, and I think we're going to pick that up this evening during closed session. Elaborate on that.
Any kind of follow-up plan from the behavioral health survey discussion? Because it sounds like they've got a lot of kind of action items or strategies they're implementing, and
a lot of strategies that they're implementing. No recommendation coming out of that committee meeting. What we did request of that team is that as they are getting ready to implement new ideas or new programs, to please keep us informed so that that we can continue to support them, and that we're able to talk to the public about why we might be introducing some of those programs or some of those approaches that they're going to be taking.
this is somewhat related, but I saw that in the bills payable that the FAST program got renewed. I know that kind of was on pause during COVID, if I remember right.
Correct.
Do we have families signed up for this year? Is it? Okay.
There was thing they did was reach out to some of those families not sure where we are with numbers, but this would be the second
Okay, great.
since COVID. And it was very well received last year when it came back.
Is that for just K-5 families or is that all district?
I believe it does have to be an elementary student, or at least the families have to have at least an elementary student,
Okay.
just from how our training was. I think it is school specific.
Okay.
So,
And
yeah, I mean, if the family has older plus elementary,
Right.
but I think there has to be at least one child in elementary.
Yeah, that's how, when I volunteered in that, that's exactly how it was. As long as one kid was in elementary, I know there were sometimes even high school students that would show up for nice dinner.
Great.
Caitlin Ulrich runs that program for us.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Joni about personnel committee meetings? Okay. All right, we'll go into action items and we'll do the first reading of the open enrollment policy 423 with the amendments.
So just a quick kind of update for you that weren't at the committee meeting. It seems like every year in January when we have to do program limits or space limits, there's questions about our policy and if we can change things. So Mitch and I just wanted to be proactive and try and update the policy to hopefully ease some of those questions. So I sent out, any of the updates are highlighted in a tan color. And essentially there's two changes, kind of two major changes that we're recommending. The first would be that we move from a random process to having a wait list. Basically how it works now is if we do have space limits, and let's say we can take 2 students in 7th grade and we had 4 people apply, our current policy says their names are just drawn at random and the other ones are just discarded. And what sometimes happens is we draw those 2 names, but only one of those students ends up coming. But we can't go back to those other families then and say, hey, we actually do have a spot. So by creating a waiting list, and most of the applications are electronic, it says in here, we encourage electronic applications, those become time-stamped. And essentially what the state has said is we can move people off our waiting list all the way through the 3rd Thursday if they will be in school on the 3rd Friday. So, if we do have a program limit and we take 2 spots and we have 4 people apply, and then we find out that the parent has to commit that, yes, they're coming or no, they're not. And if they're not coming, we can add it, take that next person off the wait list and add it to them. So we're not just telling parents no, but we can say no, but you're 3rd on the waiting list. And, if there's a spot that comes open, we'll get back to you. So I kind of felt that was one important thing that we could do to keep those families and just not like discard them, right? Like we want them to come and we want to bring them. The second one, and Andy, I come back to what you say often, and I think this is trying to capture what you talk about when you talk about it in January, is we have students that are current students here that at some point during the year, they end up moving. So they attend this school year through what's called a tuition waiver. So they get to stay at the school for the rest of the year, and they have to apply for open enrollment next year. So we might put together our numbers in January, and there's 60 students in 5th grade. They're one of the 60 students. We already know they're here, but according to our open enrollment policy as is, we might say there's 0 spots in that class or 1 spot in that class. And if there's 2 kids under a tuition waiver, we'd have to say only one of you gets to come back, even though we already know about them. So what we did, or what we're recommending, is that we change it and grant automatic guaranteed acceptance to students who are currently attending in the non-resident district, but not through open enrollment. So if we have a family that is currently here now and ends up moving out of district, when they reapplied for open enrollment, they would be granted automatic approval, regardless of whether we have space limits set forth.
A question on that.
Yes.
I didn't see where it was clear. It's more of a direction for us. Are we counting those students then in our open enrollment applicants?
Yes, they still have to apply. They,
So when we set our numbers,
yes,
we need to know for certain how many
but
open
they,
enrollment tuition waiver students we have.
no, because if they're on a tuition waiver, we would know. So when we
But when
brought,
we
they,
set our-
yeah,
we have to
so
include them.
we would not, because they do not apply to the space limits that you set. It's an automatic guarantee without,
So
not,
that was my question.
Yes.
Is they're not going to be brought to us as an open enrollment student?
Correct. That is correct.
So
they'll have to apply for open
Right,
enrollment, so
they-
they'll be in the system, but they won't be. I guess how I see it now is these are the automatic approvals. These are the numbers of open enrollments that are left in our recommendation based upon them. So it's their open enrollment has nothing to do with whether there is a space limit. They're just automatically granted
Ian,
approval.
Can I try to rephrase your question? I still don't quite get it. So let's say in January, we have to set a limit for sixth grade class, say 5 more students or whatever, open enroll. When those tuition waiver kids apply,
They're not one of the 5.
they don't count towards the 5, even
They
though
do
the others are
not.
automatically in.
Correct. Yeah, they do not count towards the open spots that you have. So 5th grade, there's 60 students in that class. I'm guessing we might come and say 60 is our max at the middle school because it is based upon your board numbers. So prior years, you'd say we want to give 1 spot. The open enrolled student or the tuition waiver student would not take that 1 spot. That 1 spot is still delegated for somebody who's not a current student. We did add that, so it's not contingent upon space at all. That's that part about not through open enrollment, even if space is not available. So that it doesn't matter if you say there's 0 spaces, 5 spaces, 25 spaces, they have nothing to do with space. You could still deny them if their application was ineligible, if their application was invalid, or if any other reason other than space availability. So expulsion, history, those types of things, you could still deny for that reason, just not a reason related to space. A general education space, I should also say. And then the committee wanted to take it 1 step farther. We had initially, what I brought last week, I had that there would be a priority for siblings of any current students, and that was how our policy currently reads. Those 2 were priorities before. The policy committee wanted that change that siblings would automatically also be granted acceptance. So if I have a 4th grader and a 4K student at home, and my 4th grader goes here, my 4K student automatically next year would get to come as well.
And not be counted towards the open.
And not be counted towards those space limit slots at all. So it's a family who is here will automatically get to have any future children here as well. They still have to apply, but they will be automatically accepted pending any of those same other denials outside of an invalid or inappropriate application. So those are really the 2. So in the format, yes.
So ignorant rookie board member
No, you're
question. So we're like, from a business perspective, we're like heating the building, paying the teachers and everything. So why don't we just say whoever wants to come here can come here, like 30 kids.
So Dr.
Per
Dunn,
class.
Dr. Dunn wanted to say that. That he asked that question. And I think what it comes down to is we want to grow, right? Like we absolutely want to grow. But I think we have to grow responsibly in a way that the board can fiscally control that to a sense. So there are no extra rooms in these buildings. So if you say we're taking everybody who wants to come here, and then all of a sudden you need to hire a middle school teacher that can teach another sections of history and science, we have no place to put them. We have no classroom for a teacher. So at the middle school or at the elementary school, if all those grades have 3 sections, there is not a room for a single section of teacher. So at some point, our first graders have 61 students. They get 7 more students. They have 68. Are you really going to put 68 kids in 3 sections, or are you going to split to 4 sections? And then are those seven students enough to offset the cost of a new teacher? Where are we going to put them for a classroom? another set of books and materials. I think Mitch had told the committee it took, what'd you say, 8? It takes 8 students to offset the cost of a teacher. So I think, like we were saying, this would allow us to know how we can grow, but it's not just gonna throw caution to the wind, because we still need to do it in a responsible way, so we're not biting off more than what we can.
And the state's intention was to not place a financial burden on schools where you've prepared your budget and all of a sudden you get all these open enrolled students, and now, yes, you have to add on to your building, or you have to hire additional staff, and that was not part of your budget. So that was the state's intention behind open enrollment, and being able to set numbers that make it fiscally responsible to us, anybody who wants to open enroll here, and not cause an undue burden financially.
What's the high school enrollment? What's the high school enrollment? Around 240? 245? About what it was when I was.
And there's no limits on high school.
Okay, yeah.
It's easier at the high school to create a third section of science class versus create a fourth section of third grade.
We can go up to 22 for the company. But Angie is correct. We don't have extra spaces. The home ec room this year is actually Project Lead the Way room. And over the last couple of years, that room has been brought up at times. That is actually Chuck Schmidt teaches down out there for the back half of the day for Project Lead the Way for middle school. That all worked out very well.
And I think that came up, like, I think it was Joni who talked about what is our capacity. With the current building structure, I think it'd be awesome if we had 40 more elementary kids, but then where are you going to put them? Because we don't have a place for them if you have to make another section of classes. So I think this way, it allows us to bring in families who, I think it might cause some relief to some families who are here. Mitch and I had a family, they actually moved last week. They called me about a month and a half ago and said, we bought a house and it's a half a mile outside the district. Are my kids going to be able to stay? And I had to say, I can't guarantee it because they're both in classes that this year are closed. However, if the board changes the policy, but like that was worrying for them. This is another one. I talked to Matt last week. He's talked about bringing his kids here. One of his kids is in a closed spot in a closed group, but his other child isn't. And I said, well, according to our policy, you can bring one next year and the other one can automatically come the year after, even if their class section is closed, which isn't ideal. He doesn't want his kids in 2 buildings for 1 year, but we've never had a path for like some of those closed sections before. So at least here we would have a pathway for it. So I guess, we were just trying to really think about the questions that Andy and some of you who have been on for a few years have asked when we've had to set program limits. And basically it takes what our priority is on the current policy and moves them into automatically guaranteed.
I have a question about that because the sibling currently only applies to tuition waiver.
No, it's any student. If the sibling is a member of our district,
So I guess I'm
siblings would
trying to get
automatically
my
come.
head around, okay, when the student's a second grader and there's a family of 4, 3 of them can come, second grader can't. When they're a third grader, they can. I don't understand why we wouldn't just take them as a second grader. So we'll wait a year until the class is too
I
big?
would assume most of these are going to be like 4K or K siblings that, like they have an elementary sibling and now their second child is just starting school and we're saying, yeah, for sure they're going to get to come.
And I guess my question is, if we're okay with it in that instance, where Matt could bring one and then the next year could bring the next, why wouldn't we just be okay with it in year 1?
I think that comes back to, and I think it was Dr. Dunn who said, well, why do we even set program limits?
But we're okay with it in year 2.
Well, in year 2, we're saying we don't have our
Right.
policies.
That's what I'm trying to get my head around. So if we're saying it's okay in year 2, why would we,
It get
why
provides.
would we turn away a family of 4 because one student couldn't come when we would take them the next year? And there's still no room for them.
I asked that same question, and I think we were trying to toe a line between how do we be as welcoming as possible? How do we be as least restrictive as possible for kids who want to come here without putting us in a situation where we are testing our capacity levels, both in terms of space and staff and resources. And
And I think there's got to be a line somewhere.
that's kind of where
With the line being, send one of those 4 kids this year, we'll take them all next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, because if we just, like you said, if we just take them all at once, then it renders limits kind of useless, for one.
We're saying the limit's useless the next year.
Well, but, it gives you a year to maybe anticipate, some potential increase in enrollment instead of just boom, get a family of 4 right now. So, but I think that if the family makes the choice to enroll one of their 4 kids, that shows a commitment. Because like we just heard, some parents don't want to even split their kids up for even 1 year, right? And I think to me that shows a real commitment from the family to say, any kid you'll take, we'll send, and then to try to reward that commitment the following year, to try to help the family grow its relationship to the district is really kind of where that concept came out of. But yeah, I think it's
better
fair
choice.
to argue either way on it.
I'd be more in favor. I don't know if that's even if you're suggesting that, Andy, but I would tend to be more in favor if there's an open spot available that family's going to take. The other kid wouldn't have to wait, even if there's not it's closed or whatever. The family could come bring the whole family. I mean, I think Matt's providing a perfect example where we could have 2 additional kids. We're losing out on 2 because we're not going to take 1. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think it still provides a limit because we're saying if it's just 1 kid and it's closed, then it's not available. But they've got 4 kids and 3 are in a spot where it is available. I just feel like we should let the 4th in, even if it's closed, because in that case, we set a limit of 60 kids for 3rd grade, and we're gonna have 61 instead. Because it's just that 1 person that's coming in for the closed.
I think right now
Spot.
parents are still making that decision because I know we have in the past where the random draw has drawn 1 person from that family. And then the parents have to decide, am I splitting or is 1 going there? And I know it's not Mitch who draws, but I know Mitch has drawn where it's one of the 3 kids was chose randomly and the other 2 were not. So then that family has to decide, are they sending the 1 or are they not? And in that case, they might send the 1 and they've never had a pathway to get the other 2 here.
And get like 10 extra kids on the home side.
Yeah, I understand there's a risk.
But there's the other things that we can't be looking at are apples and oranges, because we have a family that moves in with 4 kids. There are students. We have no choice. That creates a space issue for us, but there is no room for flexibility in that. It's the open enrolled students that want to be here. And yes, we want them to be here. But what burden does that cause us? And I hate to look at it that way, but if there's things that we can kind of control, the only thing we can help control is on the open enrollment side when it comes to that.
At what point do you close a section? Like, is it right there when we're at the line of like, if we get 1 more kid, we're gonna need to open up.
board has established class size recommendations. And so part of the admin team, what they do is we look at our current enrollments, what the board recommended class sizes are, and then that's how we establish it. So several of your classes at the elementary are over board recommended class size limits, and that's usually where we come. It's like
10th grade level.
15 to 1 or 18 to 1. It depends on grade level. But K2 is smaller, I think, right?
15 to 18, and then it's 18 to 20, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the
They're
recommendations.
established in your policy. And so, you know, it basically is like, well, with the recommended class size limits you have times however many sections, this is what we're looking at. And if there's not that many kids in the class, we say this is how many spaces we would accept. And if there are more students already than class limits, then we come with recommendations. The last couple of years, the board hasn't wanted to say 0. They usually put a placeholder of 1 in case we have tuition waiver students. But again, this is just trying to clear up like those, if they already attend here, how can we guarantee that they get to come back? Type questions. That is always the hard one in January when we say we don't have any space.
Do we think in the future, like success is gonna be like how birth rates are going, where like staying flat is gonna be considered successful?
The mineral point numbers are not growing. Our enrollment numbers are growing because of our open enrollments.
Have you looked at, did you see that data that Aaron sent out? I think we've got to talk about that at a separate session, but every district in Southwest Wisconsin is like, has declining enrollment, right? And so far, like birth rates are declining up here. And as Mitch said, like we're only growing because of the open enrollment. And I don't think anybody else around us, I think they're all declining. There was just like a school district up by, which was a brand new school district up by Richland Center, Prairie du Chien, one of those that they created a school that grew because they created a new school. But it's sort of top of mind for me. How do we keep funds coming into the school so we can continue to keep all of our staff and all of our great programming, and the way we do it, it seems, is like through bringing students in. So I understand the limits, and that's okay to kind of like make sense, give yourself some time to adjust and to grow intelligently. But I mean, with Matt's example, I mean, there's probably, I don't know if that impediment that Andy was raising makes a lot of sense to me, that we would say like 3 kids could open enroll, and then we got to make the other kid wait 4th year. We're just talking about usually just like one kid. Why not just get the family so that we can keep what we've got, you know, and keep our finances in order.
So I've always been a proponent of let's get as many kids as possible, but class size does matter. And we want our classes to be as full as they can be without compromising the ability for maximum success, for the best possible outcomes for every student, right? So we've set limits. We usually allow ourselves to go a little bit over those limits, but keeping something in place allows us to not let those limits be blown out of the water. So I'm thinking of like the 2nd grade this year has 21 kids per class. And granted, I think maybe that's a bad example, but there have been times. So which grade has 60 kids? 5th grade and 1st grade? 5th grade and 1st. Okay. So, you know, those are 20 students per class. It wouldn't take a whole lot over the next few years for 1st grade to go up to 22 or 23 kids per class. That is a lot of kids in one classroom. What is that a risk we're willing to take?
We had 64, and I wasn't teaching myself, but we performed well.
We also know that every class is different. We know that the 2nd grade this year, while a small class is fairly resource intensive, just based on the and a unique population there. If they weren't, would it seem like a big deal that maybe add one more kid to each class, each room? Probably not, but
It might completely change the dynamics of that classroom. And if we're talking about teacher retention, we just make it a free-for-all and we just keep adding kids on.
Yeah, so I'm not suggesting a free-for-all. The limits, some limits make sense, right? All I'm saying is that like, and I think you have this example that Matt's bringing up, that he would bring his two kids here, but he's not gonna split them up for a year. And I wouldn't do it either. Like, I'm not gonna send my kid to Dodgeville for a year and my other kid over Darlington or something like that. Like, it's just way too much driving. At some point you need to make your life convenient, right? And make it work for you. So I don't know.
It is,
And I
it is a
guess-
difficult position to be in.
I guess to Will's point, the sticking point for me is still, we're still saying we're okay taking that problem in third grade because your brother decided to come.
so my thought is if that happened this year, again, thinking very specifically about the second grade, if I looked and I said, okay, 21 in a class for this particular group, that is pretty tough. And we know we're having 2 more students next year. We're going 3 sections, no questions asked. So it would give us a year to make that adjustment. And maybe that's not a good reason, but that's where
I don't know that you always have that knowledge until you're in that situation. I mean, the numbers base the decision.
Right.
It is, the guidelines we're forced to
Right.
follow though.
Right. I just, that's just where my sticking point is. We're saying in year 2, whatever problem is created.
If that family were to buy a house in the district and it's a closed off section, there's no difference. We're accepting that child because they've moved into the district.
And if you want to give the district more money, get them to build more houses in this community, because the vast majority of people who open enroll are because they cannot buy a house in this town.
Well, it's a huge issue. And like a price of an average house here is 250,000 and Darlington it's 130. So it's like, it's double, but I wouldn't be opposed for us to like be working with the city
Then
on
you're
that
getting-
and like
then you're
talking
getting
about it, but that's
full
like,
student weight instead of 2/3 of a student.
that's a long-term thing. But I guess Angie, like what I'm understanding, because I wasn't at the committee meeting, is that we're trying to make this process and this policy more flexible
Yes.
for families.
And taking more of the concerns that have come up in the previous 2 years. Because we get to January where you have to set the limit. And a lot of these conversations and a lot of this language has come out of those meetings. So it's trying to pull in language from those conversations.
So just to finish my thought though, like we're saying we're trying to make this policy more sort of family friendly. So is it more family friendly? And it doesn't actually seem like it if we're gonna make them wait a year. It's like halfway there, but not really. all the way.
It's definitely more
So
family friendly. And I appreciate
Remove
these steps
from
very much. I
Status
just
quo.
get stuck with
Status quo is if you have
Okay.
a sibling here, you're
keep
on
your kid
preferred
on for a
list.
year and then.
You're not
take
even
them.
guaranteed acceptance to open enrollment.
This is
So
a
now we're
little
saying
thing.
3 years.
You're guaranteed.
But is it practical, Aaron? Is that like, as a parent, or I guess, to Matt's point, sorry, Matt,
No,
like because he's gonna, for 1 year, his life's gonna be hell, because he's gotta drive kids to 2 different school
No,
districts. So is it worth it? I mean, that's a huge commitment we're asking them to make if they want to open enroll to the school district.
Okay, but I mean, with the current status quo, you have the same problem,
Yes.
current status quo.
Are we
With our
fixing
current
the
policy.
problem though?
Well, I think the debate we're having is, are we family friendly, but school harmful? Right?
Yeah.
Or school unfriendly, right?
I'm not-
Are we,
I'm not suggesting we get rid of all limits. I'm just on this one single point about why wait a year?
No,
Why not just take it?
I asked the same question.
Right now, I think I mean, under your current policy, they could be waiting forever. Because there's nothing saying they'll ever have a path to get here.
And with the wait list.
Until they get to high school, yeah.
But with the wait list option, we have had families who have taken a seat and not showed up. And with that wait list, it might not separate a family. The family might be able to get all of their children in this very year that we're talking about. Where with the previous policy, that was not even an option. Once it was no, there's no revisiting. The wait list allows for a little bit more of that flexibility where instead of breaking a family apart, it may mean all of your kids are able to come.
I think like the wait list and the change with the siblings gives that family a not yet, but the yet part is important because before we've always just said no. Now we have a no, but not yet.
And sorry, these are incredible. Address most of.
I'm all
I
in favor.
complain about every January.
Generally,
It's
taking
just the,
staff recommendations and
just
and going with it. So I'm fine to try for a year and we'll see if it helps.
Well, that was where I was gonna come down is, I mean, I think we want to open the gates a little bit and some of us want to open them even more. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I think, what's the best situation where we can maybe make a change and reassess in a year and say, did we overdo it? Or was it really not a huge impact? And were we too restrictive? Can we relax them even more? Or should we look at it over a 2 or 3 year period? Because enrollment's probably pretty variable in terms of which families try to enroll. But I mean, where do we want to settle on for maybe a trial period? And, I don't know the right answer, but if there's strong majority sentiment to further amend this policy, I mean, now's the time to do it.
I'm in favor of, let's try this. Let's take this step forward. Doesn't mean it's perfect. It means it is progress and we can look at it next year and say, you know what, let's take that next step. Or we can say, yeah, this is pushing us as far as we can go. So let's take one step today, knowing that we can revisit it later.
Makes sense.
And obviously in April or May or whenever it is, we bring open enrollments to you, we would be able to discuss how many people were impacted by splitting up, are there any families that are being impacted by spot not open for one and acceptance of the other or something like that too.
I have a question about the wait list. Is there a criteria or is it just like first come, first serve?
First come, first serve.
I did it based upon timestamp of application. I looked through some DPI guidance, and it basically said random unless the policy says there's a wait list. So, I mean, I just did a timestamp based upon the submission of the application because we already took away the priority statements, like the wait list in the current version would have those priority statements of are they a current student? Are they a sibling of a current student? But since we took those away, I don't really have anything else other than when was the application submitted.
I just want to be very cautious about exclusion because it might stretch our resources more than we would like. That's not part of the wait list.
No, I guess I'm not 100% understanding what you're saying.
Like if student 2 has more needs than student 4, make sure that student 2 is the next person on the wait list that's going to be accepted.
They would pending special education limits. Like if there were resources identified in their IEP, those are a separate area. I mean, like in a general ed application, yes. But if the student is a student identified with a disability, we do establish program limits separate for special education.
Okay, so I mean, that does beg the question here to Will's point. So, and the question is about giving preferential treatment on the wait list to siblings. So let's say a family of 3 of them, we can only accept 1 because 2 grades are closed. And those 2 kids have to wait till next year, according to the current amended policy. But that means those 2 kids get put on the wait list, correct? For those grades closed. So what if those
If you have
kids,
like if you have 0 spaces, there would be no wait list, but if you have like 1 space, which has been kind of what the board has done most years, is they say there's 1 space. I don't think they've ever said 0. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look.
In previous years,
Last year
last,
was the first year
last
that
year
we-
they added.
We did the 1.
have 0.
Okay.
Okay, but I mean, does it make sense to have siblings?
So then the
of-
wait list would be based upon priority would be given to families who have other applicants who were accepted.
Yes, in the same year.
Okay, so I have 3 children, so I say this coming from that, but I almost feel like we're saying we only want families that have multiple kids, because if you're a single kid family, if I only have 1 child in my family, then families with multiple kids get priority. And is that fair?
That's a fair question.
And I don't find that fair, like when you're, so if they're doing a priority based upon other siblings getting in and my, you know, so you, Mitch and Andy are in the same family and Mitch and Andy get in and you didn't, you get priority over on the wait list. But I only have 1 kid in my house. Well, I'm being punished for only having one child over the family that has 3 children.
Well, I don't know if we can talk about it like as a punishment, like
But
government.
they're priority,
who's
but you're
set
giving
all
them
taxes.
priority when you talk about
Sure, I understand.
equity and not and treating I mean, you're basically saying we want people that have 3 and 4 kids here and not people who have just 1.
But isn't that what our sibling policy is doing anyway, even if there's a year gap? We're
You're not excluding the
no.
single in that year.
oh, because it's not on the, yeah.
Because then it's not considered taking up one of the slots.
Okay, just wanted to ask. I mean, I think that's a fair argument for not doing that.
I think if we don't want to test our limits to capacity full force, this is a good first step. And we can revisit this again next year at the same time, right?
Can revisit it. It just any changes have to be in place before January. And then I would assume after January, you can
Right.
come back to it
For the following
for
year.
the following year or next fall.
Any changes made after January would not impact the enrollment for the next school year.
I think around this time, we would have a really good picture, like for kids who may have moved into the district and after school has started, then we've done our first count, that we have a pretty good idea of who was affected by these changes and who wasn't, and how that affected our district. Correct.
If we adopt this tonight, would this start applying for the next school year? So
So as
even
long
if
as you
there's
do
any split
first read,
families
if you
today,
do first read tonight, second read next month, then this would become your policy for January when open enrollment goes in for the next.
so are you aware of any families that have kids here and then in other school districts where they could?
Only like younger kids at home. You know, I know of families that might have 2 children here and they have 1 that will be coming to school age like next year. I think that's what we'll see more often is, you know, I have 2 kids at home and my 3rd one is going to be turning 4 this year. And now I'm saying I know they get to come to Mineral Point without.
So with the policy, the way it stands today, we're not opening the floodgate of going to the school district next fall that we're aware of.
Not that I know of. I know of several families who are under tuition waiver who will breathe easy knowing that they have a spot for next year for their family because they're currently here.
Really,
They moved, like they just moved like last week or will be moving next week or whatever it is. And they wanted to make sure they could stay.
moving out of the district.
They're moving out of the district.
That's the one that's a half a mile across
Yeah.
the. Just about.
Can we just annex them and then get the property tax?
In the
I was
100%.
gonna say, I mean, that's a complicated process, but that is possible.
Correct.
Do we happen to know, so, I understand, Christy, what you're saying about, and going to, about like, this is a first good step. But it sounds like the question I'm asking is that we're not opening the floodgates next year, that we're not aware of a big rush. So the next question would be then, are we aware of a lot of families like Max that have multiple kids that aren't bringing them here because they don't want to split up the families?
I don't know.
We generally get awareness of that once they apply.
Um,
We Usually go through the application process to find out if there's a spot.
So how many, so would we know by saying how many people we turned down last year because of that, or we accepted one student and they said, no, we're not gonna come because we don't want to split up our kids?
Off the top of my head, I can think of 2 families that might have been the case last year.
How many kids were that imaged, you know, top of your head?
I think one family it was 2 and another one it might have been 3.
5 plus Matt's 2 kids is 7.
They're gonna get.
But I think you came back, I think you were starting to say that every government facility entity has to draw a line somewhere. That was kind of going to come out of your mouth, I believe, earlier, and then you stopped that thought.
Well, I think the line can be, that we have the limits that are here, but just if a family comes to the district with be multiple kids and we have space and those kids are admitted in some grades, 1 or more grade, that we would then automatically enroll the other kids
In a closed grade.
in the closed grade. Because I'm just not seeing a problem here. That's what I'm trying to get at. So we're talking about maybe 7 kids, at 4 or 5. I mean, is that really a problem to us? We got 240 in the high school.
But it could be a
So,
problem if
to-
4 of those 7 are in the same grade, and now you have 64 first
Well,
graders.
then you're talking about triplets, right? What's the chance? You have 1 parent out.
Matt was raising his hand back
The
there.
complex issue, I don't have, an answer, but I just, about your board goals, teacher satisfaction and about this, how does this policy change work that or not, and I think about 1, 2, 6, 7 kids coming in that might impact bigger goal.
Yeah, I'm also trying to figure out how to pay teachers over the next 3 years.
I just think it's, we add on more students, does that impact their well-being and something I'm thinking about just.
Sure, they're hairy problems, right?
Is yours like an ad hoc basis review or automatic?
No, it'd just be automatic. If you can get a kid into the school district because we've got an open spot and they get in, then the rest of your family is eligible.
Yes, so there is no ad hoc. It has to be in the policy.
Right.
Because the 2 other Januaries that I've sat through the open enrollment conversation, and then we have it again in May, right? And every year, like, is there no way around this? And we push and push and push. Like, nope,
And this
your
was,
policy says this.
yeah, and this is the change of trying to get around those questions that you've asked the last couple of years.
We have 1,000 kids in the school. What is it, 800, 600, 700?
7.
700, and we're talking about 7 kids. That's 1% increase. I guess 7 kids make a financial difference to our bottom line that it's worth wobbling about this or not.
If it was 7 high school kids, no problem.
But they'd be high school kids someday.
Someday, right, which is what we hope, but again, when you come down to the number of students in an elementary classroom, if your recommended limit is 18, having 19, does that really throw off the educational opportunities? Not necessarily. Are there extra resources that might be required because of that one student? That might make a difference. But if you're not talking about 1 more student, if you're talking about 6 more students, there can be a difference depending on where those 6 students fall. It's just like it's like the argument I get from legislators, look at all the waste, I said, well, okay, if I have 10 students leave my district, but not all 10 came out of the same grade level, where do I find cost savings? Because going from 19 students in a classroom to 18 students in a classroom doesn't mean I'm going to cut a teacher. I still have to provide an education for those 18 students. I have to pay salaries and benefits. I have to light the classroom. I have to heat the classroom. I have to do all this. So there's no waste in there. But that's a $12,000 hit for my school district. And if it's 10 students, that's $120,000 that just walked away. Where do I recoup that $120,000?
I'm saying the same thing, but the opposite.
But now coming in, I'm not getting the $12,000. I'm getting a little over $8,000 per pupil. And when that increases the number of students in a classroom, it increases the number of resources that I need. It fills up the space. I'm not getting the money to necessarily provide another staff member or to add another classroom or to remodel some space that makes it feasible for me to hold another class. That it makes that a very difficult decision to be in.
But you could make CPI because you've got the extra money.
We certainly could.
You know, I hear you, Matt, about employee satisfaction numbers of kids in the class. And I know the teachers aren't here for the money. These teaching jobs in Mineral Point are important jobs, you know, in terms of being like important white collar jobs that are available in this town, which there's not a lot of in rural areas. And I know it's not all about the money, but the finance committee, I guess I'm staring down the barrel at what we're looking at over the next few years. And, you know, when we looked at, I don't have the stat in front of me, unfortunately, but when we were looking at class sizes, you know, in those younger grades, it seems like it's 40, 45. I know my son's class first grade is real big. It's 60. But I remember in the 80s and 70s, there was classes with 74, 72. So you had 80? Yeah, they were. Yeah, I mean, it was really big back in the day. And we've got the same facilities. I mean, we had smaller facilities, like the old high school, middle school were incredibly small compared to what this today in the newly remodeled elementary school. So, you know, I really believe in the strategic planning thing that they make better decisions as a group, and whatever the group decides, so I can like have confidence that we're making the right move. But my concern is just really about our finances over the next 3 years and seeing those smaller class sizes at the elementary school. If I'm right about that, it seems like there's the space, you know, to accommodate more kids here. If we're talking about 7 to 10 extra kids, that it would be beneficial from a bottom line perspective.
So like those classes don't, you know, like the kindergarten class, if it's, you know, 45, you might say, yeah, we're going to take 12 kids. We'll take up to 12 kids because that will get us up to our recommended class size number. You know, like those small classes don't have the program limits. It's how do we moderate the larger classes in a responsible way so we don't in August have to be talking about we have 72 fourth graders, and I don't think it's fair that they're in 3 sections. The small classes, we'll take as many open enrollment kids in kindergarten as we can get.
But is it realistic with the policy change that I'm suggesting here, but modify this a little bit? Say if you have a brother or sister in another class that gets in and we're going to accept the whole family. Is it really realistic to think that based on what you've told me tonight, that there's maybe 7 kids out there that currently would, well, there's no kids that would qualify for next year to come in because we don't have any split families and maybe we turned away 7 kids. Is a 4th grade class of 72 realistic? Like what's realistic? What's realistically going to happen if we change the policy the way I'm suggesting? Just modify it a little bit to allow if kid gets in an open space, his brother and sister can come even if the class is closed. Is 12 kids in 4th grade realistic? It doesn't seem like it. I think we're talking about 10 kids spread out across an entire school district.
Again, you're only talking about open enrolled students. You're not talking about anybody that potentially moves into the district.
There's no houses for sale here, so nobody's going to move here. I mean, it's a big problem.
Everybody lives in a house.
Oh,
Some people live in the.
another way to ask this question is, I mean, do you feel like making Will's suggested change to the policy, do you think that is too high of a risk to stressing all capacities, resources, staffing, spacing, where you would not support that change?
I think you're rolling the dice no matter what. You're rolling the dice. If you leave the policy as presented, you're rolling the dice that you're going to have a split family that has to make the choice. Do I send my student for a year or not, or do I not send my kids at all? Or I'm rolling the dice with that. I've got 3 kids, 2 of them are in open sections, and the third one is a closed section, and I have a couple of families. If that's the case, then that makes that number balloon, which does cause some space and resource issues, especially at the elementary level, because that's really what we're talking about. We don't have a space issue in the high school. Middle school has some space issues, but so you're rolling the dice on either side of that.
I know. I'm asking the administration. When we had the policy committee meeting, we decided to roll the dice with the current amendments. And
So if you remember me going it up, I got really, my hands started sweating
I made the same suggestion that Will did.
and I got really nervous.
You talked me out of it. I had to say, yeah, and I got talked out of it, which told me that you're not comfortable taking that high of a risk as an administration.
I would say that is correct.
Okay.
I think there's the potential to put undue stress and burden on some of our elementary classes due to exercise.
Okay. That's what I needed to hear. I also want to hear from Bob, who's policy chair. You have some comments, Bob?
I do. I just think what I like about the way we have it. Oh, your picture just went away. I hope you can still hear me. Can you still hear me? Okay. I think my biggest concern is that we have to be, once the students are in our district, I think we owe them a certain level of service, that we've come to be known for as a district. And I think they're the ones we owe them the most to. Our current students, those who are actually in the classrooms, be they open enrolled or some other way. I think by taking away this 1 year waiting period where it gives us time to come up with a good plan for educating the newer students coming in, I think it's a little bit of a bait and switch almost to the people who are here. We set our classroom sizes for a reason. And I think adding, it may sound like, oh, we're just adding 1 kid or 2 kids or 3 kids. But you've all heard that expression, it's the breath mint. You've eaten too much and you're okay. And then you have the breath mint and it can cause a problem. So I think that one student sometimes can be the breath mint for the teacher. Do you know what I mean? If they're already, if we have teachers who already feel they're under stress in a particular grade level because they have full classes and classes where there are a lot of needs, throwing 1 more kid in can be really, I think, tough for them. And that's kind of why I like it as presented, with that kind of 1 year where at least we get some time to make a plan. Even planning with the teachers, there's really no time if we take that 1 year waiting period out to make that big ask, a potentially big ask that we don't think may be that huge right now. But, when they're in the classroom, it may be a big deal. And I hope that makes sense. I hope I didn't talk too much in circles, but.
Oh, thanks, Bob. I just wanted to hear your input. Okay. So you want to say something?
I think in either situation, there's a problem to have. Either we potentially lose kids or we get more kids. And I think we need to err on the side of having more kids. I think that's just the reality of the future we got to figure out. And that's why I support what you're saying, Will.
At what cost?
I know.
I mean, if we had unlimited
you know, if we had teachers knocking down our door to come and teach here, and we had 2 extra classrooms at the elementary school, I think this might be a different conversation. But we're already struggling to find staff. Are we at capacity at the elementary school?
Are we struggling to find staff?
We have, in essence, because of the second grade being 2 sections, there is an available classroom. It would just mean somebody, moves to broom closet for some support positions, but if we go 3 sections everywhere, adding a 4th section somewhere, we don't have space for that. We don't have space for a 4th section of a grade level.
I think that this is a step in the right direction. And I'm afraid that if we jump too far, we're going to have to retract and go back. And then I think that might cause more problems later down the road.
Well, I think this is a really good discussion. I mean, I think we're on the nice edge of trying to, figure out where we want to follow, going to be more family friendly or more school friendly, and what's the compromise. Bill, if you want to make a motion, pass the policy with your amendment, now's the time. And we can vote up or down. Otherwise, I'll take a motion to approve the first reading of the policy as presented.
Yeah, I will. I'll move it in, and that's no hard feelings. I think just take it to a vote and see how people feel about it. I'm not sure if it's true that we're having a hard time.
There's a national teacher shortage.
Yeah, but so Madison School District had vacancies of 40% of their positions to start the school year, and we were fully employed here, or whatever you want to say, fully staffed. Mineral Point. So there's a lot of things that are exceptional about Mineral Point. The quality of the education here and the quality of the staff. I think that shows in our grades. My kids go to school here. My nieces go to school here. Your kids go to school here. Your kids go to school here. Your kids go to school here. I care about all of your kids. And I don't want a dip in the quality of education for any families here. But also given sort of my own long-term view of Mineral Point, having grown up here and having seen larger class sizes, like in the 80s and 70s. My own class was 65. I know that the teachers, some of which are still here, can handle larger class sizes. The space issue is a problem, but just like when I'm trying to tease out here, is it really a problem? And it doesn't. From the answers I'm getting tonight, it doesn't seem like if we got 7 more kids next year, spread out across the elementary school, 1 in each grade, the risk is you roll the dice and they all end up in 4th grade. But I don't think that that's a big probability that would happen. So, in my main motivation in all of this is to make sure that we have resources at the district to retain all of our staff. So I know that there's this balance of like making a teacher's life hell because there's too many students in the class, but I'm also trying to make sure, do we keep all of our teachers on staff? Do we have enough money to do that? We have to go to referendum, do we not? Does the referendum pass or fail? 70% of referendums passed this fall, just now in the last election, but that means 30% didn't. So we've got to keep maintaining or growing in order to keep everybody staffed and meet CPI and all of that. And it's like treating the staff well financially and like making sure we can maintain our benefits and the salaries and meet CPI, maintain our beautiful facilities, meet our obligations for the referendum, or where this is really coming from for me. And I haven't heard from staff or the administration tonight. Convincing argument, I guess, that the amount of kids we would get if we changed the policy would overwhelm us to a place where everybody's life is going to be terrible here because we have so many kids in the district. And if that does happen, from a management perspective, I guess I'd say we're gonna have a tough year. And then we've got so many resources because we brought in 20 or 30 kids into the school district that we can look at hiring additional staff and we're gonna figure it out. So with that said, I'll propose an amendment to the policy that, and I guess I need some help, Angie, figuring out the words, but just that,
I don't know the way to do there.
that,
Are you guaranteeing acceptance?
guaranteeing acceptance for, any kids that are,
In essence, you're not going to split up a family.
we're not gonna split up a family. So
Any
if,
guaranteed acceptance for any family where one sibling was accepted, all remaining siblings will also be accepted.
in that school year. Hey, Harris Skelding.
Reopening the floor for discussion again, or do
Open.
okay. The policy as it was presented is more aggressive than what Angie brought forward to the policy committee. Like the policy committee already went in and said, yeah, we want more. We're going to push it. So I won't be supporting it because I feel like now we're pushing it even further than we pushed it the first time. I want to see us make this first step, measure our success, review, and perhaps next year make a subsequent step. But for me, it's a step too far.
And for this, I agree with that, Joni, and for the same reason I'm not hearing like administration saying, oh, I think it's a great idea. Let's bring them all in right now. And just with the argument that class sizes used to be larger, I think teachers are expected to do a heck of a lot more than they ever were in the past now. And kids need to learn a lot more. I mean, these kids are learning more, I think, in school now than I've forgotten. There's just a lot more that they have to teach. And we've learned that class size is important. And, you know, you look at your better school districts, they typically do have smaller sizes. So I don't think I would be comfortable supporting this amendment either. But I like the financial concept, but I just think overall I can't support it.
Well, I think that's what we have to do. I think we have to get uncomfortable, start to figure out how to do things. And this is one step to do that. If it doesn't work, then we have to go backwards.
Okay. I disagree with that philosophy, and I would disagree with it respectfully, that you're not dealing with the uncomfortable nature of what's happening in the classroom. I would come back to Bob's point of what you went to school, what your experience in school was, has got to be drastically different than what your children are going through right now. The expectations that you're putting on the teachers are completely different than the expectations that were on the teachers 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago. And you know, when you sit and talk about our district numbers and our report card numbers and our ACT numbers and all those other numbers, and you add more and more and more to that, you provide less and less and less opportunities for staff to address the needs. And we talk about the individualization of some of the education experiences we want to try to provide. We're going to remove that opportunity. And you've heard me say this before, so I'll say it again tonight. The decision that you're making impacts somebody else that you get to walk away from. And that's a difficult position. And yeah, I realize I have to make difficult decisions, and you're in the position to make those difficult decisions. But I would ask that you take all of those things into consideration when you're making that decision.
Now, I'm a huge fan of teachers. The reason I'm supporting this is we are saying all of those things you just mentioned are not a concern in year 2, that kid can come no matter what. That we'll figure out how to pat the teacher on the back in year 2 when they have 21 students instead of 20. You know, I think we're kicking that concern down the road and then saying doors open. So that's why I just don't see why. If we're gonna do that, we can't do that in year one. We're already doing that in the policy.
Any other comments, discussion?
I guess the only other piece I have too is if all it would take is for one teacher to be so fed up, we're not giving them any time to adjust to the concept or anything. One teacher leaves, and then us having to go out and find a new teacher because of adding that breath mint, so to speak, that I was describing before. That throws away the financial benefit for years. So that's the other piece I would be concerned about. Not to mention the ding in quality of education.
I think in Robert's Rules of Orders, I'm not allowed to, on behalf of something I recommended. I don't know if you follow that here.
I'm not aware of that, but I mean, you've stated your point several times, but yeah, if you have a new point.
Just, we looked at the teacher satisfaction, like what was that called? It's the
Triage survey.
triage survey and
Culture triage.
And, I actually thought morale was a lot higher than I anticipated post-COVID. When I looked at that. And to your point, Bob, I guess I just don't see the problem. If we're talking about 3 teachers in each grade and 7 kids coming into the school district, even if they're all in the elementary school, that's just 1 per grade. I know we're rolling the dice that there could be a flood in, but I'm just not seeing those numbers here tonight that there'd be a flood. It seems like we're talking about 10 or less kids coming into the school district next year because 1 kid got in and the other kid can't. And I guess in terms of, it just doesn't make sense to me to make them wait a year. It's a bad marketing thing if we're trying to grow the school district. That's it.
Other question.
Okay, so
Read what I have mentioned to you.
policy was amended to accept every student from a family as long as one family member has been accepted in open enrollment. Does that capture the? Okay. Harris?
Yes.
Eisner?
No.
Janetka?
No.
Johnston?
No.
Skelding?
Yes.
Bush?
Yes.
Dunn?
No.
Motion fails.
All right. So is there a motion to pass the policy as it currently reads?
Or for the second reading. I'll make a motion, we bring the policy as it currently stands to a second reading.
Sorry, thank you for correcting what I was going to say. Okay, so just to be clear, this, as it's currently written, will go to a second reading, so not going to be official policy until it passes. Yeah, so this we take a vote on the motion to allow it to go to a second reading, correct? Is that the language?
Correct. Through the policy as, so it's still the first reading, does not become policy, official policy until 2 readings.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry, who seconded that, Joe? Okay. Oh, Bush, Eisner. Anyone else want to?
I want to reiterate that we have to have first reading tonight, second reading next month in order for these changes to be implemented by January 1st, so they impact our open enrollment season for next school year. So there's no more wiggle room after tonight in order for us to at least get the benefits of the things that are written right now.
Okay, go ahead and call the vote, Mitch.
Bush?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Eisner?
Yes.
Janetka?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Skelding?
Yes.
Done.
Yes. Okay, next is the first reading of the. Next is the first reading of the employee handbook, which basically changes the leave days from some sick, some personal days to 4 personal days. Essentially the premise of the policy change.
Correct.
And just leave days.
Yeah, they're just leave days. You can take them for a personal reason or a sick day reason.
Somebody read the language just because it wasn't. Whatever the language change is.
Yeah. Are you pulling that up, Mitch, or do you want me to grab it? It's in the meeting minutes of the.
Yeah, it wasn't there.
I mean,
I just assumed.
that's okay.
So there's 3 versions there. There's the original with things crossed out. And then I don't remember what the third one is, and then the modified.
The one that says modified on the top. Basically, my understanding is any place it said sick leave was changed to staff leave, or the word sick was removed. Mr. Carey presented it, with changes to the policy. Like physical. He did it with Mr. Wainwright. Okay. And the policy committee reviewed the changes that were presented.
It's basically section 7 in the handbook. So it's page 38 of the employee handbook. And then section 10, which is page 41. It basically strikes out sick and personal and just equates to staff leave.
The premise behind the change, my understanding is that there are situations where each staff gets 10 days, 7 are personal days and 3 are sick days.
Vice versa.
Vice versa.
Up to
7
3
sick
can be
days,
personal.
3 are personal days. Thank you. Now, okay, so let's say a staff member has a kid in sports or a travel team or whatever. They got to take a day to take the kid to lacrosse or whatever. And they only have 3 personal days for the whole year to do that. They use it for 3 personal days, but they want to use a 4th day, and they're going to call in sick to do that. And especially that begs the question, well, why should I lie and call in sick? Really, I'm just taking a personal day. And should the staff be allowed to take a personal day instead of calling it a sick day? And without changing the number of days, basically removing the limits of you can only take so many sick days, you can only take so many personal days. These are 10 days, you can use them however you want. And then really the debate was, does this open the door for any abuse? Does it benefit the district by maintaining these limits of certain sick days versus personal days? There is, Bob mentioned some controls in the policy that kind of prevent some abuse. One of them is the administrator has the right to approve or disapprove all requests. And the general policy is no more than 3 employees per building may take leave on any given day when school is in session.
Maybe the first week or the last week of a semester can't be used to extend holidays or breaks within the school calendar.
And it can be used as vacation, it does call that out.
So, the administration supported the change. Felt it was a staff-friendly move to make without creating a huge risk to the district, given that the administrator to review all requests for leave. So it was approved.
The recommendation from the policy committee is to approve the change in the handbook language.
Right. Andy?
I'm just wondering about the staff leave shall not be used as vacation or to engage in activities for which the employee will receive compensation from any source.
You thinking of like coaches or?
Or a personal speaking engagement from a professional in somebody using their professional expertise in the education field on a personal level, going and speaking somewhere.
Not on behalf of the school.
Right, I would not want to prohibit.
We have situations where staff or administrators have done that, right?
But now we're saying they can't.
Do they have to take a personal day to do that, or did they just get permission from the superintendent to do it on behalf of the
That's
school
not a
district?
question I can answer. I would assume that you're going on personal business or taking a personal day.
This language was in the original policy. It was not added. You're under leave day restrictions?
Yeah,
Yeah, that language was in the policy already. So how do we reconcile that? Because I think there are.
see, I don't see it in the normal. Oh, it's 10:03.
It's 10:03 because 10:01 and 10:02 were removed.
I have, if that's happened, I have allowed it. In the fact that it's representing the district in a positive light. It's getting the Mineral Point name out in front of state associations, national associations, whatever the case may be. Right.
I'm just concerned that it may need to be part of the administrative oversight portion.
You think the way this language is written, Mitch, allows you to make exceptions to those restrictions?
Yes. Because it comes back to that section you referenced where the district administrator can approve or deny.
By any and all requests. It
I
sounds
guess
like
we're probably good with the fact that it identifies those periods, but personal business that cannot be rescheduled for a different time at the discretion of the district administrator. Maybe we just take out during these periods. Leave may be approved for personal business that cannot be rescheduled for a different time at the discretion of district administrator or his or her designee.
you think that's clear.
And we're doing it now. I don't know that there's a concern. I just don't want language limiting our staff from doing exactly what you said, promoting great staff.
But it sounds like, I would assume the language is designed to keep staff from having a side job.
Yeah, oh yeah,
extra
that's
income.
definitely the intent. I'm just,
Right.
anytime you but the verbiage is already there, so.
There's
I
precedent's been set.
don't have a concern. I thought it was in the verbiage.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
The precedent's already been set that you allow it anyway.
Okay.
Right, we don't charge them a leave day in that instance, correct, Mitch? Anyway?
Correct.
Yeah.
It would be a school business day. They're conducting business on behalf of the school district somewhere, so would not be considered personal leave on a day like that.
Even if they're getting paid for it in addition to their pay that they're getting here.
Is there a limit to those kind of days? Full business days?
I can speak to only one individual that I'm aware of in my 12 years here in the district that received compensation for speaking somewhere else. I spoke at a national conference with Joel. There's no compensation. It was, hey, would you be willing to do this? Talk about what's going on in your district? Sure, absolutely.
So
We'll
it's
do
not
that.
like this is the policy that's getting abused.
Correct, correct.
Okay, so allowing a school business day for a staff member is just at the discretion of the administrator.
Correct.
Okay, if there's no other questions or concerns, I'll take a motion to approve the first reading of this policy.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of the policy committee recommended change in the handbook.
I'll second.
Johnston Skelding. You're late, Bob.
Late.
All right.
Zoom delay.
That's right.
Any other comments or discussion about it?
I know it says in here that Josie and Belmont schools have actually seen a drop in absences since they put this into place. I'm all in favor of this. I just recommend that we budget a little more next year for subs, just have a little padding just in case. You might, but otherwise I think it's great and it goes towards the retention stuff that we're working on.
Okay. Anyone else? Mitch, call the question, please.
Johnston,
Yes.
Skelding.
Yeah.
Janetka,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Harris, Bush,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go to employee services. Positions to approve.
I would recommend we table item number 2 at this point in time. We don't have a name to bring forward as a recommendation.
Okay. So I'll take a motion to table number 2, the approval of the assistant bookkeeper until the next regular board meeting.
Motion to table item number 2. Second.
We do it all in favor or
Yes.
all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Okay. We can either approve this long-term substitute in open session, or we can go into closed session and take care of the issues in closed session and discuss any confidential issues with this candidate and then approve it after closed session.
I prefer to take it to closed.
And we'll make a motion to go into closed session.
Go to closed session.
Okay, so this will be,
We're not gonna do the business services for closed session.
I think you should.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. All right, so,
Track motions.
sorry, Will. So we should move to table this approval until after closed session. Is that the most appropriate thing to do at this time? Table number 1 by employee services until after.
I don't think you have to table it. You're just going to move that into closed session and a decision will come after that. So I don't think you have to table that. I think you can jump to business services and then take a motion to go to closed session.
Okay. I mean, so is that an action that the board needs to vote on? What I'm saying?
Not if we're shifting into the same meeting.
we're just shifting at the same meeting, so you're just recommending that we, move it into closed session. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we're gonna go to business services. Does anyone have any clarification questions, or otherwise I'll take a motion to approve them together or separately?
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion Skelding. Mitch, there were two fuel expenses. I'm assuming one's for the buses and one's for everything else.
Yes, one would be buses and one would probably be,
One's from Wayne's.
yeah, that would be like the school vans and,
Yeah.
and the service trucks and things like that. So yes.
Any other discussion, comments? Hey, Mitch, call the question?
Bush,
Yes.
Skelding.
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Janetka,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Okay, so now we'll convene in closed session. The motion to move into closed session, we'll talk about an employee performance evaluation, and we'll review the long-term sub candidate. Will we also discuss
Employee
compensation?
compensation, yep.
Okay.
Seconded.
Thanks. Okay, Harris and Heisner, and then we need to vote on that to go into closed session.
Harris,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Janetka,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Skelding, Bush,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Over. Take a break, 5 minutes.
Bob, do you want to?
He just came on.
And he just got off the meeting. So hopefully he will call somebody.
So he can participate in a